He couldn't make a challenge there. He's really in pain, is Ben O'Sullivan. Sheridan. Good ball for Bradley. It was just a little too high, or Bradley was a little too low, or a little of both. But what a chance to completely wrap it up. Jim Sheridan did all the running. Their captain and centre half going to the other end.
I was born on the 27th of November 1944 during the Second World War in Pier Road in Rathmullan, in the house right beside Mrs. Harkin's shop. I spent the first 10 years of my life there before we moved up to St Joseph's Terrace. I went to school in Rathmullan, and the teachers were Master Gallagher, Miss Carberry and Miss Deeney. And I must say I enjoyed every day there. There was good days and bad days, I suppose we all had in school, but I enjoyed it very, very much, and I have a great, those teachers a great debt for giving me a good foundation for further life in general. And I went then, after leaving the school there, I went to the Tech in Milford.
As most people in Rathmullan would know, in the 50s and 60s, my father was the manager of Rathmullan Celtic as well as playing for them. And I suppose the house became the hub of activity, certainly. And I can remember distinctly the Pier Road, where we lived down in the Pier Road in the 50s, and up here later on in the 60s in St Joseph's Terrace, where my mother, particularly in the Pier Road, there was no washing machine. All the jerseys were washed by hand, they were dried in the line, and that was it. We never went out dirty, so it was a full-time job when you consider that basically there were summer cup matches and 2 or 3 nights a week during the summer months. The abiding memory of all that, of course, the smell of wintergreen. There always was a smell of wintergreen around this house, because when the dirty jerseys came up to be washed, the players had rubbed themselves in wintergreen, and the wintergreen was all over the place. Strange as it might seem, this is one of the places in Rathmullan that those of us that were around in the 40s and 50s played soccer on the beach. That was the only available place to us, really, and we played as long as we could until the tide came in and prevented the game from continuing. Could be 6-a-side one day, it could be 12-a-side the next day. We had many wonderful memories of playing here, and many a pair of shoes were destroyed and very irate parents as a result. But there were wonderful times. Looking at it now, it's hard to visualise how you could play football here. But at that particular time, we're looking at rocks that were covered. There was no rocks there at all. And basically what you had was sand. There was a total beach here in those days, a total beach, and it was absolutely lovely, and it was a fine level football pitch. And looking at it, as I say, it's hard to visualise what it was like then, but that's the way it was, and it was our pitch, it was our Wembley. We enjoyed every bit of it. I'm standing now with my back to the putting green in Rathmullan. In the 40s and 50s, this certainly wasn't a putting green. It was just simply the green, or Cares Bay green, and we congregated here as often as we could every day, and indeed most evenings as well, to play soccer, and particularly when the shore wasn't available to us with the tide. And then now and again, as I say, Cares Bay played up street. I don't know where the division was between the two of them, but something tells me it maybe was the Major's Road, and everybody, let's say this side of Major's Road, played for Cares Bay, and everybody the far side played in Up Street. In addition to the putting green here to my right and to Todd Shore, we also played a lot of football on the road behind me at what was known as the Pier Hotel Corner, or McAteer's Corner, and the gable wall of the hotel corner was very, very useful because there was no windows in it, and we banged many a football against it over the days and over the weeks, indeed over the years. The only disturbance we had really was from a car owned by a gentleman called General Bush. Every dog in the town was following General Bush's car, so we had to get off the road when the football was not playing football while General Bush was passing. I'm standing here now in what was known in the 40s and 50s as Bats Field. It's a housing development now, but years back it was an open field, and that was where I began my organised soccer. I suppose the first football match under rules that I ever played was played here at some stage in the 50s, and my father and a lot of other men from the village, fathers and grandfathers, all started playing soccer here, and it was also where the Rathmullan Cup was played in all those years gone by. So as well as playing football here, I can remember as well coming down here to train, and I can tell you it was a little bit different to the training and coaching that goes on now. We just ran round and round and round and round until we really collapsed. And I can remember here many a night with a resident of the village, well known to a lot of people, Jim Barker, and we ran around here training to get the bodies in shape. I don't know whether it worked or not, but anyway, so we trained here and we played football here in the 50s before the soccer moved to the town, up to the new pitch up in Rathmullan itself.
In around 59 or 60 was the first organised soccer match that I was involved in, and that was in the Rathmullan Minor Cup, and the Rathmullan team got the final of that team. I actually was very much involved in the management of that team as well as being the captain. I suppose when you're managing a team you can make yourself the captain if you feel like it. But anyway, I'll read out the names of the people who played. I'm looking at the photograph here in front of me, and I remember them all well. I remember the tournament well also, and we were deservedly beaten by Letterkenny Rovers. And the team is, as I look at it from left to right, that very young boy on the left is myself, Jim Sheridan. Beside me, reading the back row, left to right, Jim Sheridan, John Coggins, Brendan O'Connor, Mickey McFadden and Lexi Monaghan. On the front row, left to right, the late Tom McLaughlin and Anthony McCarran, John Patton, the late John McCarran, Paddy McLaughlin and Jerry Ward. And a formidable outfit we were, even though we didn't win the competition. Every one of those people played very, very well in the tournament, and they were all very, very nice people as well as being very good footballers.
Way back in the late 50s, I suppose it's fair to say that we had matured at that stage and we were playing a little bit more organised soccer to a degree. The youth of the town, including myself, 14, 15 years of age, some 16, used to play Rye Rovers and used to play Solely Rovers in Rathmullan. Occasionally, there was no regularity about it, it wasn't league or anything, we just arranged a match and we cycled to those venues on bicycles. I can remember distinctly going to Rye on a bicycle to play Rye Rovers, and basically there were 6 bicycles and 11 players on the 6 bicycles. There was no subs, so there were 6 cyclists and they had 5 on the bars of the bikes, so that was 11. And I can remember one day distinctly as well, going down a hill in Rye and almost decapitating a chicken that had come across the road. I was actually on the bar of that bike. I wasn't riding the bike, but I remember the man who was riding it very well, but I won't disclose his name here. And those were good days. We were knocking around to those matches, playing matches. We were simply washing in a stream maybe afterwards and coming home on the bikes again. And we loved every bit of it. That was growing up before we got into the serious stuff of soccer. And it was great to look back on those days and all the friends we made. I suppose it's fair to say all of the youth of Rathmullan had one ambition at the time, and that was to play for the first team, Rathmullan Celtic, in the Summer Cups. That was the only organised soccer that was around the place at the time. And basically, very difficult to get into that Rathmullan team because basically they were all very, very good players and they were more senior than those of us that were still in our teens. My breakthrough came through unfortunate enough circumstances in one way for the person who gave way, and that was in the semi-final of the Milford Cup. As a teenager, I would have been mid-teens at the time, and Father Mick was right half, Father Woolley was centre half, and Teddy Blinny was left half in that team. And you can appreciate how difficult it would be for an aspiring young man to get a place in that team. But Father Mick unfortunately got injured, and I was shoved in there right half against Letterkenny Rovers in the semi-final, and we beat Letterkenny Rovers, and I retained my place, let's say, for the final, and we beat Kildrum Tigers in the final. So that was my first venture with Rathmullan Celtic. So that was how I made my breakthrough, and I suppose it's fair to say that that led to greater things. I've a lot of great memories of playing for Rathmullan Celtic in a lot of competitions, but the most memorable springs to mind that has never left my mind really was when we got to the final of the FAI Cup sometime in the late 60s, probably early 70s. We were playing a team from Derry called Shelburne, and Shelburne were managed by a man affectionately known as the Digger, and he had a very, very good team, and it never was short of a few professionals, and they were playing for entertainment in the summer, so it was a star-studded team we played, and we beat them 4-2, which was some achievement, and I'm saying that, not saying it lightly. I thought it was a great performance by a Rathmullan team, made up basically of people from Fannet and Rathmullan and the goalkeeper from Rathmullan. I'll just name the team and we'll take it from there. Ernie McGarvey was the goalkeeper from Rathmullan. Right back was Jim Sheridan, my brother, and the left back was John Doherty from Fannet. The middle three was James Kerr from Fannet, myself and John Kelly from Rathmullan. And the star-studded forward line, and it was all that, I'm not saying that lightly, was John Patton on the right wing. Inside him was Patsy Sheridan. Centre forward was Tommy Patton. And inside left on the other wing was James Doherty. And outside left was Father Francie. And basically that to me was the best performance, but basically with a local team. And I enjoyed every bit of it and had great satisfaction of being a member of that team. I suppose it's fair to say that the 60s were known as the swinging 60s. I have to say that it didn't impact much on me in the north of Donegal as the swinging 60s, but the 60s were a time of great change in my life. I left school at about 16 years of age and I went to work in Johnson's in Letterkenny, spent a couple of years there, then did 2 interviews, one for the Guards and one for a post as psychiatric nurse in St Connell's Hospital in Letterkenny. I was successful in both interviews and somebody's prayers were answered because I got the Guards. I was a bit apprehensive about all this because basically I had never been away from home before, and basically in those days Dublin was like going to Australia today. So in any event, I decided that I'd take whatever opportunity I got first, and I got the Guards. So I went to Templemore on the 28th of May 1964. And I spent my training there, was posted to Mohill in County Leitrim in October of the same year, and spent almost a year there, and then transferred to a village outside Mohill called Clune, having a short stint in Carrick-on-Shannon between times. A lot of my early career was spent in South Leitrim, where I have great memories, met lovely people, still go back there to this day. And if I'm asked about it, I'd say that the best years of my life in the Guards were spent in South Leitrim. In any event, South Leitrim has another lot of memories for me because it was while I was stationed in South Leitrim I met my late wife Patricia in 1966, and I thought she was a very arrogant looking lady, but I decided to chat her up anyway, and all went well, and recorded for a few years, and I got married in 1968, or we got married in 1968. And in actual fact, we got married in Sligo because it was halfway between Mayo, where Patricia's relatives were all living, and Donegal. And believe it or not, one of the priests that married us was Father Eddie Deeney, young priest at the time, the 23rd of November 1968. And we had a great life together, and basically our sons were born later on, John and Jim. John was born in 1973 and Jim was born in 1975. Changed house a lot of years in those days, that's the way it was. I was transferred quite a few times. I changed house about 5 times in the 60s, running to various towns and villages throughout Leitrim after we got married. Patricia wasn't a soccer supporter, she wasn't a football supporter at all, but having said that, she learned very, very quickly, I can assure you, and she ended up one of the best supporters that Finn Harps ever had. And the day she died, she was a great Harps supporter. Just one thing in relation to that was she was often seen in Ballabafay with either John or Jim or both of them on her lap at football matches in the stand. And later on, when Sligo Rovers were playing against Finn Harps, Jim at that stage was a bit younger than John, so he was wearing the red and white of Sligo Rovers and John was wearing the blue and white of Finn Harps. So we took all sides with us. I suppose the 60s, as well as being a time of change in my personal life,
was also a time of change in my footballing career, because now I was graduating, let's say, from Rathmullan Celtic to more serious stuff, and I played for Sligo Rovers, a few games in the League of Ireland, played a few games for Longford Town. When I got injured, Sligo Rovers dropped away from them, and at the end of the 60s I was selected to play for Sligo Rovers in the FAI Junior Cup campaign of 1967-68, and we got to the final, and we played one of the matches. There was a replay. We played one match against St Orchard United at St Patrick's Athletic Ground in Dublin, and we played the second match, which was a replay in Oriel Park in Dundalk. So I must have done reasonably well, because both those teams after those matches wanted to sign me, St Patrick's Athletic and Dundalk.
Bradley, good ball for Norris, a great save by Blount, it's there. Noel Dunn, well won in the air for Wallace, for Campbell, for Dixon, anything could happen. Well, what a simple goal. Everybody's on, linesman no flag up, plays back for Dunn, and that's it.
We're sitting here now at The dressing rooms in Finn Harps, Finn Park and Ballybofey. Patsy McGowan is here beside me. My manager most of the time was at Finn Harps. I suppose it's fair to say that I look at it and I think about this year, and it's exactly 50 years ago this year that I signed for Finn Harps. Myself and Patsy went back along, but of course because Patsy was the goalkeeper in Rathmullan team, my father was running that team, so I would have known Patsy a long time ago about it. But I had 13 great years here at Finn Park, loved every one of them, good days and bad days, more good ones than bad ones. But having said that, it was great, and I have a picture here in front of me, and we'll be talking about it probably later, and that is a panel of players that was here when I was here, and every one of them was a gentleman, great fellas, great characters, and they're still great friends. But there were great days, and as I said already, and I'll say it again, I won't be able to say it often enough, I owe a lot to you. You're a great man every way, and Fran as well. There was a great bunch of people here at the time, Charlie McHugh and Tom Furlong. Tom Furlong was a great character too, and we had we were winning a lot of matches, so we were basically on top of our game most matches, and I suppose we were a bit unfortunate, didn't win the league a few times, but having said that, I often say that we were unlucky, but then again other teams were unlucky as well, but there was a few times we were good enough to win the league, and it's not a regret I have, because I have no regrets of being up here, but definitely it's something that probably would have been icing in the cake, would have been a league championship. To have 3 runners up is difficult to take, but we'll have the old cup final, a cup winners cup, and that's a good one.
People make comparisons about football 45, 50 years ago and football now, and the way players are looked after nowadays, spoiled, well treated, overpaid, and all that sort of thing. How Jim Sheridan managed to keep the level that he was at and play for as long as he did was remarkable. And the reason I'm saying that is he hardly ever trained along with the team. He was based up in Leitrim, trained on his own, turned up for the matches, and that took some commitment to do that there. There must have been nights he didn't feel they got out and all the rest of it. And I remember one day he turned up at Talca Park, and we're sitting getting ready, and I looked down, I seen Jim trying to put on the sock, and the leg was red, white and blue. And I says, Christ, Jim, you couldn't play with a leg like that. I says, what do I tell you? I didn't drive all the way up here not to play. I says, that's all right, you do that. That was all right. The match started, and Jim with a shin pad on to cover it up. After half an hour, and Jim was marking the top goal scorer in the league, O'Connor. You remember that? And they went up for a ball. And I think maybe Jim's arrival was a wee bit late, but they carried O'Connor off on a stretcher. Jim had broke his collarbone with his head, going up to head the ball. And that gives you some idea of the physicality of the man. And he never done anything wrong in a player in his life. He never deliberately hurt a player. But he gave everything 110%. And that was a great influence to every other player in the team, because Jim was the example that they all tried to follow. Even fellas who wouldn't have the same physicality and all the rest of it. And it always amazed me that you were able to get the momentum up to keep going like that there. Because left on your own the way you were, it must have been a lonesome trail.
Well, it might have been, but having said that, it was never an issue for me, because I know what you're saying. It's a lot easier for me to train with the boys if we come up here, and but I was training on my own a lot of the time, training with Longford Town, training with Sligo Rovers, so I rarely saw the boys until match day. But there's one thing I know myself, I had a serious will to win, and basically I wanted to win every match I went out, whether it was Deeney's Corner or no matter where it was.
But the thing is that it was a privilege to play for Finn Harps for all those times. It was a privilege to play under this man. It was a privilege to be considered good enough to be the captain of Finn Harps. Now, as I said before, and I'm very honest about this, Jim Sheridan was the captain of Finn Harps from the first year I was here, and he broke his leg. And Jim Sheridan basically did finish his career more or less. And then Patsy made me captain. I don't know why he made me captain, but he did anyway, and I stuck it a long time.
The fact that you were a member of the Gardaí, a lot of the players seen you as a person with a lot of authority, and they would never argue with you, they'd never fall out with you. You know, you probably got better treatment than anybody else.
Well, that's a unique way of putting it, but maybe you're right. But I would like to think that some of those dairy fellas, if they had anything to say to me, would have said it.
They weren't in the right circumstances.
But they were really great. But those big days, and when you think about the matches against Waterford and Cork Hibs and Shamrock Rovers, we had great times. They were playing those. They were top teams.
Qualifying for Europe was something else. Went out to all the different countries and different teams, and I have to say it was a totally different experience, because you were playing against clubs and players. There was people you read about in the papers, and an amazing thing if you think about it. And it's rare that this interview's going on this weekend. Finn Harps were in Europe before Ireland was in Europe. You know.
I didn't have that statistic now. Fair play. Yeah.
We were in Europe before.
That's right.
Ireland went into Europe.
I was back in the 70s. This park had 3,000 any Sunday, 3,000 to 4,000 most matches, and playing against the likes of Cork Hibs or Waterford, Shamrock Rovers, that was easily doubled. So there's 7,000 here matches during the summer. There's no doubt about that. Way back in the 70s.
Hale, and John O'Neill was always running for that. Jim Sheridan, the skipper of Harps. Joe Nicholl. Sharing Smith with Paul Morrissey. This is Blake the fullback, leaving it for McGrory. It needs the orthodox cross, and it's getting it. Thomas rising as the ball holds. Park and Bradley.
And just one thing about the cup, though, I was always in doubt for that cup. Not too many know that. Patsy probably heard the story anyway. But I was stationed in a little village called Drummond in Leitrim, and the morning before the match was on a Sunday, but I was going to Dublin on Saturday evening. I always travelled on my own, and lo and behold, I was working the Friday, and the post office was robbed. The local post office. I was the only guard there, and for a while I was wondering would I ever get to the cup final, and basically I got there anyway, and the rest's history. We did well.
Charlie Ferry, who has scored in every round of the Cup for Harps. This is Bradley coming through McDowell, and he was taken by Doyle. And here's Ferry. And it's there. 17 minutes gone. Munro. Up goes Ben O'Sullivan's head. Sean Byrne has scored. Jim Sheridan. Good clean header away to O'Doherty. Flanagan then for St. Patrick's Athletic. Ernie Reynolds, the centre half, is up with his front runners. Sheridan the other centre half away. Munro's header in. Dempsey in there. McGranahan. And there's the score. And Jim Sheridan, the Harps captain, in a little spot of bother with Mick Dempsey. Smith. Oh, it's a nice cross for Bradley's head. It's there. Dole to Sheridan. O'Sullivan, you see, couldn't make a challenge there. He's really in pain, is Ben O'Sullivan. Sheridan. Good ball for Bradley. And Sheridan doing all the work on it. Coming forward, making the cross just a little too hard and high. And that might have been, it should have been. Sheridan's header. Donald O'Doherty. Peter Hutton. Charlie Ferry. Harps full of running now. Good ball. Hutton. Good cross. Bradley. Well, that's it. That is truly it. Sheridan, what a fine skipper he's been on the Harp side. There hasn't been a lot gone by him up the middle. Since they went into the league, they've been wonderful supporters, these. They've travelled the long journeys overnight to Cork on many an occasion. Jim Sheridan himself will get the cup, a former St. Patrick's Athletic player, and the first member of Garda Síochána ever to captain the cup final team. And he to present the cup to Jim Sheridan. And so the cup will make the 160-mile journey to Ballybofey.
And we get memories coming back to Donegal with the cup and bringing back to Ballybofey and Letterkenny and the cup in Rathmullan and all the rest of it. It was absolutely wonderful. As a result of her FAI Cup success, we qualified to represent the League of Ireland in the European Cup Winners' Cup against the Turkish champions Bursaspor. They beat us 4-2 in Turkey, but with high hopes of still getting the result necessary to put us through to the next round. We took great heart from our 2 away goals in the first leg. On a return game we held Bursapper to a scoreless draw at Finn Park. Here I'm exchanging club emblems with the Bursapper captain. We played well but just couldn't fashion the breakthrough, and I always felt if we'd got 1 goal we would have got a second, but it wasn't to be. Not scoring, particularly at home, was unusual for us at the time.
Harps appeared in the UEFA Cup 3 times against Aberdeen, Derby County and Everton respectively, after finishing up as runners-up in the league. And our first match was against Aberdeen in 1973. The Aberdeen manager, who was Jimmy Barnthorne, watched Drogheda versus Finn Harps in preparation. It was a scouting mission. For some reason he singled out himself for praise. In the first leg at Patraudry Park, Aberdeen, 11,000 people attended, and Aberdeen beat Finn Harps 4-1, and the Harps goal was scored by Terry Harkin. And the second leg was back in Ballybofey, and there was 5,500 people attended, and Finn Harps won, again scored by Terry Harkin, Aberdeen 3. And we had our first experience of European football when we played Aberdeen in the UEFA Cup in 1973. I thought we did reasonably well. I distinctly remember there were 2 Scottish internationals, Davy Robb, who scored 99 goals in 345 appearances, and Drew Jarvie, who bagged 131 goals in 386 appearances. And they were both strikers for Aberdeen, so certainly the defenders, myself included, were well occupied those afternoons. We did well against them, and we certainly weren't overawed. In 1976 we were drawn against Derby County in the first leg of the UEFA Cup. Every one of the Derby team was an international with either England, Scotland or Wales. Players like Charlie George, Colin Todd, Archie Gemmell and Bruce Rioch. Indeed, the previous season, 1975, Derby thrashed Spanish giants Real Madrid 4-1 at the baseball grounds in a second round European Cup tie. The first leg of our tie took place at the baseball grounds in Derby in front of over 13,000 fans. While we never stood a chance, whatever hopes we had of keeping the score respectable disappeared in the heavy downpour before the match. The ball bounced off the surface like a rocket, and the full-time professionals were yards faster than us. They were all over us, far superior, and we got a hammering, and that's all one can say about it. This photo shows Kevin Hector scoring one of his 5 goals that night. The match famously or infamously ended up in a 12-0 win for Derby. There wasn't a lot of chat afterwards because we were very disappointed in ourselves and disappointed at our level of performance. The second leg took place in Ballybofey, Finn Park on the 29th of September 1976. The photo shows the Derby players inspecting the pitch before the game. I wonder what they were thinking. This photo shows some of the crowd before the kick-off. Derby won the game 4-1, with Charlie George scoring 2 goals. But it was a much better performance all round from us.
We were drawn against Everton in the UEFA Cup in 1978. During the 1978-79 season, Everton finished 4th in the table with 51 points behind Liverpool, Notts Forest and West Brom, so they were a pretty good team. Centre forward Bob Letchford had broken the transfer fee record in 1974 when he moved from Birmingham City for $350,000. He was also the English centre forward at that time. It was a truly mammoth task for us. In a shrewd move, our chairman Fran Fields convinced Everton to switch the order of the game, with the first leg taking place in Ballybofey. This photo shows me leading out the team in front of a capacity home crowd of 5,000. And this photo shows the Everton team acknowledging the crowd at Finn Park. Everton won the match 5-0. English international Dave Thomas scored the first. Irish international Mickey Walsh scored the second goal. Andy King scored 2. I was marking Bob Latchford and managed to hold him to 1 goal. Gulf between the two sides was merely illustrated in the Everton brochure for the game. The lack of shower facilities at Finn Park meant the Everton team had to change in their hotel. And the small dugout at Finn Park meant that one of the English subs had to step outside the shelter and sit among the Harps fans. The return game took place at Goodison Park on the 26th of September 1978. And although the tie was effectively over, Everton put out a full-strength team. There was no playing weakened teams in those days. A crowd of over 21,000 turned up for the match. Everton won 5-0 again. The photo shows Andy King scoring the first goal, a shot from outside the penalty area. I managed to keep Latchford to 1 goal again, this time a header. This jersey was worn by Bob Latchford for Everton against Finn Harps and the UEFA Cup matches, and myself and Bob Latchford exchanged jerseys after the game, and this is the jersey that I received from Bob Latchford. A quirky outcome of this game was that a photograph of the Finn Harps team appeared in the Panini sticker album in 1979. At the tail end of the 72-73 season, Harps were invited on a tour of the United States and Canada. It was only the team's 4th season in senior football, but the invite was a measure of how much we had captured the attention of the public in those infant years under Patsy McGowan. The trip was actually sponsored by the New York Cosmos, who were then the top team in the fledgling North American Soccer League. The trip would have a lot of firsts for me. The first time I was in the USA and Canada, the first time playing on an artificial surface, the first time I witnessed a drive-by shooting, the first time I was involved in a bomb scare in a plane, and the first time playing soccer in Gillick Park in New York. Our first base was Philadelphia, and the first game was against the Philadelphia Atoms in a 60,000-seater baseball stadium. This photo shows me in an aerial duel with Adams' Jim Fryatt, an ex-Dunfermline player. Like most of the games on tour, the games were played in AstroTurf, which was totally unfamiliar to us and made the sliding tackle a risky and painful business. I actually fell heavily during the game and took the skin off my backside. I was behind the goals, receiving treatment when the Adams scored. The Americans, being Americans, celebrate everything in style. When the ball hit the back of the net, there were 2 fellows either side of the goals, and they fired 2 shotguns up in the air. I jumped up because I thought someone was trying to shoot me in the middle of all the razzmatazz. Then a 12-foot figure ran across the far goals and hit a huge gong which lit up the scoreboard. The Atoms, who were the North American Soccer League champions in '73, went on to beat us 4-0, with Andy Proven, an ex-St Mirren player, scoring 3 of the goals. We also played soccer in Gillick Park, New York, and I don't think there are too many soccer teams, if any, who have had that distinction. While all other stadiums we played in were state-of-the-art compared to Finn Park, Gillick Park was a real disappointment. The facilities were poor and the surface was barely playable. We played against an Irish-American select team called Shamrocks, and we won the match 8-2. On the tour we played 8 matches, losing 4, winning 3 and drawing 1. In addition to Philadelphia, Atlanta and New York, we played games in Boston, Rochester, Montreal and Toronto. Even before the American trip, the Harps squad were a close bunch,
and there was always a feeling of togetherness in the team, but the tour was certainly an additional boost to the team morale and was one of the highlights of my soccer career. To cap things off, we had a bomb scare on the way home. One of our exploits in football against very senior opposition was against Aberdeen out here in a pre-season friendly, and beat them 4-2. And on that occasion I did score a goal, believe it or not. I'm looking at the goals here now, and it wasn't too far out, probably 10 yards, and it just side-footed into the corner. And it's there, black and white, it's history now, and I suppose you can't change the history book, so it was nice to say that while I missed a few in my time, I scored an odd one.
You scored the important ones.
This is a photograph of me scoring a goal against Linfield in the Tyler's Cup. I think it was 1977-78 season. It's in Finn Park, Ballybofey. And I'm not too recognisable because all you can see is the top of my head bending down after heading the ball. When I was growing up, there wasn't the same obsession with cross-channel soccer as there is today. However, due to Donegal's strong connection with Scotland and Glasgow in particular, there was always a big following for Celtic in the locality. The legendary Patsy Gallagher used to stay in the Coast Guard station, and I would have heard my father talking about him. Not only that, but we also had got to see some of the Celtic players in the flesh during the summer cup season. Players from other Scottish clubs like brother Bobby Tasker and Hughie Higgins, professionals in Scotland, were regular visitors in Rathmullan in my youth. I have no doubt that they helped to raise the standard locally. So for me it was a great honour to captain Finn Harps against Celtic on 2 occasions. The first game was in January '75 and it was a fundraiser for the dependents of the fishermen from Burton Port who had been lost at sea. This photo shows me with Celtic captain Jimmy Johnson and a former Celtic great Bertie Peacock. Although the game was a friendly, it was played like a cup tie with tough tackling throughout. I probably enjoyed it more that way. Unfortunately, there was torrential rain during the second half, and you can see that the state of the ground was like it was like a mud bath. The game ended 4-4. Our goals came from Charlie Ferry, Brendan Bradley and 2 from Hilary Carlisle. The Celtic scorers were Jimmy Johnson, Brian McLaughlin, Bobby Lennox and Victor Davison. The second Celtic game was a double-header friendly in July '75, which also involved Johnny Giles' team West Brom. The photo from the match programme shows the Celtic squad including a young Kenny Dalglish. Here I am exchanging club emblems with the Celtic captain Bobby Lennox. For this game we had 3 guest players playing for us: Mick Martin, Manchester United, Paddy Mulligan, then of Crystal Palace, as well as next Rangers player Alex Willoughby. Celtic were in a pre-season tour of Ireland, had beaten Dundalk 6-0 in their first game. In a hard-fought and evenly contested game, the score ended up 0-0, a very good result for us. I was very happy to be part of a defence that kept King Kenny scoreless on that occasion.
On the 25th of September 2004, Celtic Football Club cemented their status as the premier football team in Scotland with a 3-0 victory over Dunfermline. For a number of supporters at Celtic Park, this day represented more than just a win for the team in the Scottish Premier League. For these fans from County Sligo in the west of Ireland, it was a high point in the campaign to raise awareness of the story of Celtic's founder, Brother Walford, also a native of Sligo, and to raise funds for a memorial to him to be erected in his hometown. This story reduces the life of the man remembered by millions worldwide as the founder of Celtic. It also follows a campaign by a small group of Irish supporters to establish a permanent tribute to the man who would be most fondly remembered by the people of Glasgow's East End in the late 1900s as the man who helped restore their pride and self-respect.
I was at a Rangers game, Celtic Rangers game, Old Firm game in Parkhead, and we were over along with the Donegal Association, and we were sitting back in the Marriott Hotel, and this man came up to me and said, Paddy, I love what you're trying to do in Ballymote. I'm a Sligo man. He says, in that game today, he says, the hair in the back of my neck just stood up. He said, the atmosphere was so electric. He says, I'd love to do something for you. He says, I'll walk to Celtic Park from Ballymote. And I says, Eugene, I says, no way to do. I says, see Monday when you're sober, give me a phone. And he says, Paddy, I don't drink. He says, but he says, I'll talk to you now about it. I says, no, I says, I'm drinking, we'll talk Monday. And then, of course, during that course, Eugene's best friend and colleague Jim Sheridan came along, and he said, Paddy, my legs might play up. He says, so don't put me down as walking, but I'll be his walk manager. Actually, Jim walked the whole way as well.
With planning completed, the first day of the walk had arrived. Eugene and Jim got themselves prepared, making sure their feet were attended to very carefully. Many committee and family members turned out on the day to see them off and gave them a few last words of encouragement. It was decided to commence the walk to Glasgow from within the crumbled walls of Brother Walford's place of birth. The significance of this was not lost on the committee, who felt that to mirror Walford's journey from start to end would make it all the more poignant and symbolic for those involved. But for Jim, what was it about Brother Walford campaign that turned him from part-time walk manager to full-time walk participant and venture on the near 200 miles to Celtic Park?
Naturally, at the back of our mind, we realised what we were walking for. It was something that a target had been set. We had to achieve a goal, and it was going to take an awful lot to stop us from achieving that goal. We had to go over there. We had to recognise that Brother Wilford had done this years back, and we were gathering funds as well to erect a memorial to him in Ballymote. So that spurred us on. Once we started the walk, it was going to take an awful lot to stop us from finishing it.
On the 23rd of September 2004, the sponsored walk had reached Scotland. On Friday the 24th, Eugene and Jim had reached Newton Mearns in the suburbs of Glasgow. It was the 8th day of the walk. What made this day special was that they were welcomed to Glasgow by Celtic legend Sean Fallon, who in another magical coincidence is himself a native of County Sligo. It proved to be one of the highlights of the journey.
Hey lads, you're very well done. Well done. Well done. Great to meet you. Very good. You did a great job.
That was our first stop in Glasgow, really. Sean Fallon's house. The hospitality that we received there was unique, really. Something I suppose that people who know Sean Fallon would come to expect. I knew Sean Fallon, so did Eugene, but we never would have experienced that hospitality from him. We were made to feel like part of the family, really, and himself and Myra really made us feel at home. And it was brilliant that we were walking into a house of Sean Fallon, a legend in Glasgow and a legend back here in Sligo, and the hospitality was just out of this world.
Sean Fallon could indeed be described as a Celtic legend. Born 15 miles from Ballymote in Sligo town in 1922, he joined Celtic as a player in 1950, and later on was assistant manager to Jock Stein in the 1960s and 1970s. Sean played a vital part as Stein's right-hand man in Celtic's greatest ever moment, the lifting of the European Cup in Lisbon in '67. And on Saturday the 25th of September 2004, the walkers were preparing for the final leg of their journey from Ballymote to Celtic Park. The team were welcomed at the stadium front door by club officials, and former Sligo Rovers manager and current Celtic youth team coach Willie McStay. But it was when the walkers were introduced to the Celtic crowd at half-time that the extent of their achievement really hit home.
Half-time when we were planned to be led on to the park, it was very, very difficult to describe the feeling, because Eugene and Jim, first of all, had trained for months and months for it. We had done a lot of the preparations, but we were enjoying the moment as well. And I says, go out there now, Jim. I said, just enjoy. Don't be nervous or nothing. I says, this moment will go by. struck me as a regular visitor to a season ticket holder in the park was normally everybody goes away at half time, you know. But everybody seemed to stay. Okay, there might have been a bit of publicity, but people were throwing scarves, they were running down and giving Eugene money. People that we'd known from Ireland were coming down from top tiers to shake hands. And once we were round the first corner, the first lap, it was just unbelievable. The clapping was going on in the other end as well, even though we weren't there. And the whole stadium, and then we could see, I says to Eugene, look up now, you're on the screen. And it was just totally magic, and words kind of are very difficult to describe the emotion and everything else.
Words would be hard to describe the way I felt walking around the field. It was an unbelievable experience to think there that 60,000 people were standing clapping me and Jim for doing the walk.
Come Sunday the 24th of October, the site within the local park in Ballymoot was ready. Celtic chairman Brian Quinn unveiled the monument alongside Sean Fallon and revealed his pride in doing so, along with his own personal connection with Sligo and with brother Walford.
Memorial erected now to Brother Walford that he certainly deserved, and it's a very, very significant period in the culture of Ballymoot and Sligo, that Brother Walford, who gave so much to Glasgow Celtic and the people of Glasgow way back in those 1800s, and who left Ballymoot as a child, really has been honoured at long last, and it was worth every step of the way. I'll do it again tomorrow. The following year, a statue of Brother Walford was erected outside Celtic Park, and I was delighted to be officially invited to the unveiling ceremony. Unfortunately, Eugene could not attend as he was on a charity walk in Cuba. I received my first call-up to the Republic of Ireland Amateur International team in 1968 while I was playing for St Pat's. The game was against the Great Britain Olympic team, who were aiming for the Olympic Games in Mexico that year. They beat us 5-0, and while I wasn't the captain that day, I was in all the internationals thereafter. We played 2 friendlies against England in 1969-71. This is the programme from the 1969 game in Dalymount Park. The game ended up in a 1-1 draw. In April 1971 we played the first leg of an Olympic qualifying match against Yugoslavia. It was a proud day for me to captain an Irish team on my home pitch, Finn Park, Ballybuffet. This photo shows me along with Jerry Doherty, both Finn Harps players. And this photo shows me exchanging emblems with the Yugoslav captain. Here I am, an aerial duel with the Yugoslav goalkeeper. The match ended up 1-0 to Yugoslavia. This clipping from the match suggests myself and Jerry Doherty did okay on the day. According to the report, the gate receipts that day were £620. The return match took place in Rijeka in June 1971. These are the days of Iron Curtain in the Cold War, with Marshal Tito in charge of Yugoslavia. We were given carefully guided tour on the locality, and to us it seemed no different to a Western country. We lost the match 2-0 in front of a crowd of 5,000. In the 1976 Olympic qualifying tournament we played Czechoslovakia home and away. The home leg was in May 1975 in Tolka Park in Dublin under manager Dave Bicuzzi. A pre-match report indicated it was mission impossible for us, even as Czech subs in the bench included 2 full internationals. We lost 2-1 in Tolka Park and 1-0 in the away game in Ostrava in Czechoslovakia. In 1977 we qualified for the 1978 UEFA Amateur Cup by defeating a highly fancied Dutch side 4-3 in aggregate. We had beaten the Dutch 2-1 in Dublin in March 1977.
However, the Dutch team were so confident of beating us that the return match they had spent 124,000 in preparation to actually host the finals in Holland. The return match took place in May 1977 in Watervik, and we drew 2-2. This clip from the match reports give a sense of achievements that day. Greece, Germany and Yugoslavia also qualified for the finals, which were held in Athens, Greece in May 1978. We were drawn against Greece and we played very well, with a perfectly good goal disallowed when the score was 0-0. I always felt if that goal had stood we would have won the match and reached the final. But it wasn't to be, and Greece went on to win 2-0. In 1979 we played Norway in a qualifier for the 1980 Olympics in Moscow. A very young Ronnie Whelan was in this team. He was with Home Farm at that time. It was very obvious then that Ronnie had great talent, and he realised that talent at Liverpool, my favourite team in England. The first game was 0-0 in Dublin, and Norway beat us 2-0 in the away game, which took place in the city of Bergen.
Jim Sheridan, Republic of Ireland centre half and captain, number 5. I was very proud to represent my country as captain during my amateur international days. These are 3 caps up front which depict that period of time, and this is momentum from a match that we played in Bergen in Norway. This particular cap here is of particular significance because of the first international cap that I got in 1968 against the Great Britain amateur team. Now you'll note Great Britain because it was Olympic qualifying, so it was all Great Britain. And I was very proud to be the captain of Ireland, and all my amateur internationals were the captain in every occasion apart from the first time that I played. I'm very happy that this film is concerned with my football life, because if it were soccer I wouldn't be able to talk about my exploits on the GA field. Believe it or not, I started off playing GA when I was at the Tech in Milford, way back in many years ago, I forget, but it was way back in the 50s, and I was a goalkeeper in that team. And basically, again, that was the start of my Gaelic football career. It was my start as a goalkeeper as well as it was the start of my goalkeeping career, because believe it or not, I kept a few matches for Rathmullan Celtic and a Summer Cup. Afterwards I was suffering a little bit from a knee injury, but I let in 3 goals one night. My father just looked at me and shook his head and said, "That's the last time you'll be in goals." And that is so true. I remember that to this day. But anyway, I suppose the band was in place. I was a young guard, 19 years of age, stationed in Mohill, County Leitrim. The Mohill team were very anxious that I would play for them in the Leitrim County Championship. They were a very good side, but unfortunately they were let it be known by the county board that don't play that fella or your team will be suspended. So ironically, that's the way it was for a few years, and as it turned out, Davy Pugh from Sligo Rovers and myself were the first 2 soccer players, according to the press at any rate, to play Gaelic football at inter-county level. And I played on one occasion for Leitrim against Mayo and Carrigan-Shannon. I think it was 72 or 73, because we're just after coming back from America. At that stage I was playing Gaelic club football for Clun and Leitrim, and I won an intermediate county championship medal with Clun and Leitrim, and as well as that I was player of the year in that year, which was 1972. So it was a fair Gaelic footballer, only fair. I could catch a ball very well, so I was a good fielder. I could kick a ball very well, and I was very fit. So basically that was it. But the only problems I had was tackling. I couldn't tackle properly, so that hampered me a bit. In that match in Carrigan-Shannon, I was asked to help Leitrim out. Really, I wasn't in the panel at all, but one of the midfielders got hurt. We had come back from America, that's Finn Harps, and I was never in worse shape, I suppose, but I said that I'd help them out on the day if they wanted me to. So I did, and played centre field for Leitrim against Mayo and Carrigan-Shannon way back in the early 70s. And lo and behold, during the game we got a penalty, and of course the soccer player who never took a penalty playing soccer was nominated to take the kick, and I didn't score. And I remembered to this day in Leitrim for missing that spot kick against Mayo in the county championship, or the Connacht championship rather, in Carrick-on-Shannon. But I always come back and say, well, I didn't really, it wasn't that I missed the penalty, the goalkeeper stopped it, so at least I was on target. But I enjoyed Gaelic football, I really loved it, and any opportunity I got, regardless whether I was working at that stage, I played in the county championship for various teams. I played in Sligo and I played in Leitrim in county championships. But Clune was really where I won my intermediate medal and where I got Player of the Year. Also, Gaelic was very common in the Guards in those days. Each division had a team, and I played for those teams, and as well as that, in the interference, the Gaelic team in Sligo, the Guards were there, and we won a few Gaelic teams in Sligo. So, and in summers when I wasn't playing soccer, I played Gaelic every year that I was able, and I loved the game, and just enjoyed it. I suppose one could say that I've only recently retired from playing Gaelic football, because around 7 years ago, in my late 60s, I was asked to play in a benefit match really for cystic fibrosis in Knockmore in County Mayo. I was a member of a very star-studded team. I don't remember the names. I wasn't one of the stars, I can assure you, but having said that, people like Joe Brawley was in that team. The two McHales, Eugene and Eddie, who played county football for Mayo, a few of the Armagh team of those years gone by, exceptionally good Gaelic footballers, and Bernard Flynn from Meath was there as well. So basically I was a member of a very star-studded team who played, we were known as the Mayo All-Stars, and we were playing the rest of Ireland All-Stars for cystic fibrosis in Knockmore, as I say, and I didn't enjoy it, I have to say. Why did I not enjoy it? I didn't enjoy it because basically you'll appreciate we were on and off, subs coming on and coming off, but I didn't enjoy it because the hits were very hard, and here was I in my late 60s, and I can assure you I didn't feel like getting hit, and I was thinking to myself, if I was 40 years younger, those fellas wouldn't be hitting me as hard as they're hitting me now. But at least I enjoyed it from the point of view that it was a charity match. I was glad to be part of it, and it was a worthy cause. So basically that's my exploits on the Gaelic, very, very much part of my football career. I suppose it's fair to say that for me soccer has been and indeed still is a family affair. I think back to the days when my father was manager and a player with Rathmullan Celtic, and then to playing myself with my brothers Josie, Anthony and Paddy for Rathmullan Celtic, and I think about playing with Paddy at Finn Harps, and I think then about my grandson James, who's involved in soccer. I think about him, and I also have to go back and say that I think about playing with my two sons, John and Jim. I played with both John and Jim for Colliery Bows in Sligo when I retired in the Sligo Leitrim League. Jim went on to have a very successful league or career with Sligo Rovers. Injuries caused him a lot of trouble, and he spent 7 or 8 seasons there, but he went eventually to Athlone for 3 seasons and Longford Town for a season, so he had played in the League of Ireland for a good few years.
a great deal. He hasn't changed at all. I don't know what it is. Probably the youthful air in Sligo. Jim was a strong, tough as they come, a man of his time, a man of his age. Great combinations. There's a great phrase in football where the two centre backs, one's a footballer and the other's a hammer thrower. And the footballer was Tony O'Doherty, and Jim was a hammer thrower, and there wasn't many better hammer throwers in the game than this big fella. Honest as the day is long. He's a guy you always wanted on your side. He was the type of guy that you didn't want to play against. I was just a young cub in those days, and even when I looked at Jim stripped out, I just thank God I'm in this dressing room as opposed to the other one. But playing in that Finn Harps team was a real education. I was there not long enough, and one of the greatest experiences of my football life. I got a great education at Finn Park, amongst other things about life as well as football, and one of the most enjoyable times I ever had in my whole football career, and it was people like Jim that made it like that. It's often said that nobody ever has a bad word to say about somebody, and that was certainly the case with Jim. Nobody in all my time in football, I have never heard anybody say a bad thing about this young fella.
I'm embarrassed now at this stage.
And that says it all.
Nowadays, it's fair to say I have no direct involvement with any team. I always naturally like to see how Finn Harps are doing. I suppose my main interest at this stage, in addition to Finn Harps, is Rathmullan Celtic. I'll always inquire about the results there. When I'm in Rathmullan, the occasions that I am here, I will always go and watch the matches. My own nephew Owen plays for them, and sometimes the results are good, sometimes they're not, but that's football. You have to take the good with the bad. Again, it's great to hear that Rathmullan Soccer Academy is up and running again. I think it's very, very important for young people, boys and girls, to be involved in sport. Regardless of what sport it is, it's very, very important, because I think it gives them a lot of confidence, really. And I can't forget my grandson James. I go to see him when I can, playing soccer usually. James, I suppose, is like a lot of other young boys today. At present, he's playing a lot of sport. He's playing soccer, he's playing rugby, he's playing Gaelic football, he's playing hurling, and recently he started to play golf. But eventually, he will settle down, I'm sure, for some sport. And I genuinely hope that it's soccer. This is the next generation of Sheridan footballers. This young man is James the Fourth. Standing here now on Strandhill Beach, there's not much sand to be seen, simply because the tide is in, and this is one of the most picturesque areas in the west of Ireland, and what you're looking at is the Atlantic Ocean. A few weeks ago I stood on the beach in Rathmullan, another beautiful place, so I'm lucky to be living in Strandhill and to be in Rathmullan most of the time, and if I had my choice, Rathmullan is the better of the two, by a long shot.